Welcome to the series premiere of Be Well. I'm your host, Dr. Candice Norcott. Each week, we'll explore an issue and its implications for the mental well-being of you and your community. Then I'll be joined by a guest or guests who will help us take a deeper dive into the how and why our collective psychology may be impacted and how we could potentially reframe the issue to ensure our collective success and thriving. Finally, I'll leave you with some tips and strategies for your everyday life, rooted in the psychological theories that I often use in my practice. And remember, this is an important note. Be Well is not a replacement for your own therapy. However, I hope it can be a conversation starter when your therapist asks you, where should we begin? With that, let's unpack today's topic, loneliness. A few years ago, the U.S. Surgeon General's office conducted a national survey on loneliness, and what they found was striking. 21% of adults said they often or always feel lonely, not just once in a while, not just when life gets hard, often or always. And the group reporting the highest levels of loneliness? Adults between the ages of 30 and 44, with no real differences between men and women. This is what the Surgeon General called the loneliness epidemic. Now let's be clear, loneliness is not the same thing as being alone. You can be by yourself and feel totally fine. Loneliness is different. It's the feeling of being disconnected, even when you're surrounded by people. It's sitting at the dinner table with family, but feeling unseen or unappreciated. It's being in a group chat, or at a party, and wondering if anybody actually knows you. It's having people in your life, but not truly feeling connected to them. And this matters because loneliness isn't just a feeling. It has real consequences for our mental and physical health. These feelings aren't new, but they're becoming more common. In fact, about 3/4 of us believe that actually technology is making it worse. And more than half say that we're living in a society that puts too much focus on individualism and not enough on community. So what do we do about it? In this week's deep dive, I'll be joined by Chicago-based psychologist, Dr. Erin Alexander, to discuss what's behind this loneliness trend, and more importantly, what we can do to reconnect. My conversation with Dr. Alexander begins on the other side of a short break. Stay with us.
They say television is about sitting back. We say it's about stepping up. Your block has stories worth telling. Your neighbors have voices worth hearing. Chicago has a heartbeat worth sharing. Stop watching their world. Start showing yours. It's time to tune in and be seen. Can TV, always here, always yours. Experience the power of community television.
Each week on the Deep Dive segment, we'll take a closer look at an issue or challenge, reframing the way we think about it. We won't just explore the topic, we'll also talk about practical ways you can shift your perspective, whether it's in your own life or in how you understand someone else's experience. Taking us deeper today, I'm joined by Dr. Erin Alexander, a psychologist, consultant, and passionate advocate for equity in mental health care and training. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
My premiere episode. I appreciate you joining me.
Very happy to be here.
It's been my pleasure getting to know you, being psychologists, Black women psychologists in Chicago. So I'm just appreciative. And so when I think about loneliness, I think about community, and being in community with you is just great. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you.
So when I was mentioning loneliness as a topic, you it resonated with you and your practice. Can you tell me a little bit about just what your practice is like and how it shows up, how this issue of loneliness shows up?
It's something that has been, I think, a little bit more top of mind for people coming in. I think it's something historically that we explore relationships and we explore the reason for coming into therapy and end up landing on that loneliness is a factor here. But more people are coming in and they're pinpointing it on their own. I think I'm feeling disconnected. I'm not happy with the quality of my relationships, and they want support around that.
And I think, the Surgeon General came out with this report a few years ago, and, loneliness and disconnection was big around COVID and what was happening, just kind of how we were thinking about relationships then. But why do you think it was called an epidemic, or it became this kind of something that the Surgeon General was talking about?
In reading his reports and kind of listening to him do interviews about it, I think what happened for him was that he was going around the country and talking to people and just asking how they could help and what people need. And in addition to the physical and mental health things that people typically talk about, more people were talking about relationships. And I think he realized that, this is something, again, that people are really thinking about and feeling, and they're asking for support around. And so I think people became more aware of issues in their relationships, but didn't know what to do about it. And I wonder if this is your experience, like as a psychologist, I was like, of course, relationships, right? Relationships, connection, healthy relationships are so integral to just people's healthy development. When you think about just how it's shown up in your practice, what do you think people get wrong, or some misconceptions about how they're experiencing loneliness, or even challenges they have naming it? I think one of the biggest misconceptions about loneliness is that it's about being alone. And really, it's about the quality of relationships that we have. And so that's where we want to explore. Who's around you? How does it feel? Do you feel seen? Do you feel connected? Is there intimacy in the relationship? Can you talk about really important things? And so I want to invite people to reflect on that. So what are your current relationships like, and what's missing? And then how can we fill those voids, either in existing relationships or create new relationships? I want to kind of stay there for a minute. Sure. Because it was interesting, like when you're talking to your clients, your patients, do you hear things that kind of clue you in, like, oh, I think that this is something that's happening for them, even when they don't bring it up? That you hear it when the person is saying something like, I'm surrounded by people, but it still feels empty, or I don't feel connected, or I don't feel like people understand me. The people who are by themselves and who are perfectly peaceful and content being alone, they don't necessarily talk about being alone in a negative way. But if someone is alone and feeling lonely, then they tend to talk about that lack of connection and being alone with a heavier valence and a heavier energy to it. And so that's my cue to go deeper there and to just explore with them, how we got here. I think another one of the misnomers that people have when they're experiencing loneliness is that they've done something wrong. There's something about me that I'm inherently unlikable, or I can't connect. And so exploring those things and the history of relationships and dynamics in current relationships can help get at the thoughts that they may be having that get in the way of really being able to connect with people. Those scripts, right? Like the messages that they tell themselves over and over again that can get in the way. And it's more than, go out and meet somebody or, when you're talking. And I think people who are struggling with loneliness have received those kinds of messages in their life about like quick fixes or what they should be doing. What do you think are some messages that people get that actually don't help them when they're feeling this way? It is, go out and join a group or go to this, activity. I think the issue is in the prescribed things that people believe will help everyone with loneliness. Right. And it's really about meaning and purpose and things that bring you joy and things that excite you. And so it could be joining a club. It could also be getting a pet, because giving the pet gives you companionship and maybe gives you an opportunity to connect with other people. I prefer to have conversations with people to help them think about what their personal antidote to the loneliness might be. And it's not the same for everyone. Absolutely, right? Like there's lots of ways to get to the feeling, right? Because there's lots of paths to the feeling, there's lots of paths out. Yeah, the one size fits all is, I think, should be a red flag for people when, when they're offering advice, like this is gonna work. And for some people, it's changing the quality of the relationships they're currently participating in. Because some people are in lots of relationships but feel really lonely and disconnected. And so we have to look there too. What's going on in those relationships that keeps you from feeling having that drive to go deeper? Is there something with you that makes it hard to reveal yourself and engage in an intimate relationship? Is there something with the other person? And so I think that's an interesting place for people to look as well.
that resonated so much, and I wanted to do my therapy, like, say more, right? Right. Because, one of the reasons why that resonated is because I just think about how mutuality is such a theme or an element of healthy relationships. And when sometimes when you investigate with people, they're not feeling comfortable to give, but they're also feeling like they're not getting out of a relationship. And how do you talk to people about testing out mutuality and comfort and taking those vulnerable steps to being in relationship with people? And there are lots of things, right? I mean, trauma, like the things that get in the way or that make people nervous about connection.
Or even, those social norms around what you do and don't talk about and what's allowed and what you should or shouldn't say to a friend. Like, are you in a group of friends where the friends say, I love you, or give hugs or give affection? Some friends don't do that. They don't connect. If they say, hey, how are you? How was your day? Oh, it's fine. I'm good. Not much deeper than that. But if people are in groups of friends where they say, no, really, how are you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. What's been going on? It's a really different entry point and a different way of connecting. And if people don't have those types of connections, they tend to feel lonelier and not as fulfilled in their relationships.
And difficult to name, right? Because if you don't know it, if you haven't had it or experienced it, how do you kind of know what you're missing other than just the feeling of disconnection?
Absolutely. I think we could have an entire new episode just about friendships, right?
So true.
How to be friends.
So true.
How to be friends, how to connect, how to show up for people, how to ask for what you need. A lot of people struggle with that. And that ultimately can lead to loneliness and not feeling truly connected to people around you.
Absolutely. And so we're kind of naturally talking about connection because it feels like, when you're talking about loneliness, you're talking about connection. And as we're talking about this kind of learning process that happens sometimes when people haven't had the experience of a healthy relationship or connection, therapy becomes a place here. But loneliness isn't a diagnosis. Right. So it can be tricky. Like, we're not diagnosing people with loneliness, but so how do you kind of nuance that, or how do you work connection or facilitate the therapeutic relationship into helping people with this?
When I meet with people for the first time, we talk about, that question of what brings you in or what would you like to work on? And often they're talking about things like depression and anxiety. They start to talk about relationships, then we talk about the quality of their relationships and really use that therapeutic moment to understand what's going well for them interpersonally and intrapersonally, between them and the other, and then where they're struggling. And that's how we're able to start kind of dissecting and kind of pulling apart the layers that lead to satisfaction in some places and dissatisfaction in other places.
Some of the ways I think that the therapeutic relationship can also help is, this is a relationship. It's a unique relationship, but it is a relationship. And you can start to talk about I noticed when I asked you that you kind of reacted this way. What came up for you? And talking about some of those reflexive things that come up when they're in conversation, that they can help understand themselves better. I'm not sure if that comes up in how you...
It does. And in the safety of a therapeutic relationship, over time, clients can trust the feedback from the therapist and trust how you experience them. And you can use the relationship as a feedback loop to help them see how they're showing up in positive ways. Because again, part of what can happen for people who are lonely and isolated, it can affect their self-esteem, right? And they can have a kind of a slanted view of how they're seen by others. And the therapeutic relationship can help them understand how they're being seen and help them have a more positive sense of self in that relationship.
Kind of a correction of maybe unhealthy self-talk.
Yes.
Yeah. So powerful. When you think about the things that you have recommended to people, right? We kind of talked about how there's not a one-size-fits-all, but then there are some things that can be helpful for many people. What are things that you find are generally present in people who are working on connection and working on combating loneliness?
One of the things I talk to people about is being intentional, understanding the things that have just kind of happened that made those interpersonal connections slip away. Our over-reliance on technology, over-indexing on efficiency to the detriment of connections with other people, right? And thinking about how that shows up in that person's life. And being intentional about finding ways to kind of disrupt patterns that they're falling into. So one thing I talk to people about is maybe doing something like going to a farmer's market. We all need food. And the technology-bound, cold, distant version of getting food is Instacart or going to a grocery store with your headphones on and going to a self-checkout.
I feel like you're coming for me right now.
I'm coming for myself as well. But you can do all of that and never talk to another human being.
So true.
But what happens if you go to a farmer's market? You're walking around, you're outside, walking around, connecting with people. You can have those small, spontaneous, unexpected moments of conversation with people. And when you're at a farmer's market, the person you're talking to at the stand, they grew it or they made it, and they're passionate about it. It's a lot easier to jump into those spontaneous conversations with a stranger when it's about something they're passionate about or you have a question. And those folks are much more likely to just kind of have a conversation with you about it. So, being intentional, but then taking something that is already a part of your life that you already need to do and just maybe stretching it a little bit. You need food, you need to go to the grocery store. What about a farmer's market? In Chicagoland, we're lucky because they're all over the city and they happen year round. So just thinking about it in that way. So what small changes can people make?
That's getting me so excited just because it's warming up. And so, right, like the just warm Chicago, right, and the opportunities there. But that's so true. I mean, there's so many things that automatically we do that slowly shuts the door to connecting with other people, and we don't even see it that way, right? Like we want to listen to music while we do the things every day, but then we have headphones in and we're not talking, or we're not even open to engaging in somebody telling us we dropped our wallet. I mean, you know what I mean? Like just little everyday things, but I love that suggestion so much. And it's true, especially when you're engaging with somebody about their work or their passion, it's practice with the conversation, practice with your conversation skills, and generally it's going to be a good encounter, right?
And you bring up a good point, practice, right? And that sometimes when people are isolated and don't have an opportunity to connect very often, they get out of practice of those spontaneous interactions and small talk, which is difficult for some people. But the prescription from therapy is to go to practice it, right? And to think about spaces you can go into that feel safe, that feel like you can kind of test some things out and practice interacting and socializing with people in a different way. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm just thinking about farmers markets now, and I'm like, which one am I going to go to? But the accessibility of it. So that's just such a practical nugget. What are some things that would get in the way of somebody trying that, right? So they're home, they leave session, and they're, I'm ready to take this thing that Dr. Alexander, suggested or invited me to try. And then what do you notice kind of gets in people's way?
So I led with being intentional, and I invite people to think about what that means for them and what gets in the way of being intentional. And often it's not making a plan. And so we can talk about something, they can be excited about it, and it makes sense. The next thing we need to do is talk about, okay, when do you think you might want to try it? And ask them, what do they think the barriers could be? Is there someone that you might invite to meet you at a farmer's market? Just kind of playing through what might come up and helping them come up with solutions so that they don't get stuck and not get out there and give it a shot. And if they're struggling with whatever the suggestion or recommendation has been, we could talk about it and talk about, okay, well, what feels like it might be a little easier? What do you think you might want to try first?
I often use the concept of what's the smallest possible step towards this thing. If this feels big, like what would be the smallest possible step? Just finding a farmer's market might be a small step, or picking out your outfit that you might wear whenever you're headed. Yeah. But I think the being in conversation too, because a lot of times what I think is going to be the barrier is so left field from what somebody actually shares as something they're worried about or something that might get in the way. Yeah, so being in conversation about that, that's helpful.
Yeah.
A thing that I think psychologists do, so a little bit behind the scenes, I'm hoping that over the course of the show, people get a little bit to understand and humanize therapists and psychologists, is that, there are some jobs that are just lonelier jobs. They're jobs that are, one-on-one, or you're just, maybe working from home. And something that different professions do are get together to be in shared spaces. And so I know you and I are part of a consultation group where we meet regularly and talk together. But have you seen kind of other things that help professionals that maybe work in more siloed positions or jobs that are maybe inherently lonelier that you'd recommend or that people have found helpful?
I think exploring opportunities to go into the office periodically, and again, to go back to the intentional piece, to really make a plan to go in at least once a week. Because we have to go against the energy of what's happening, right? It's easier to be at home. It's easier to work from home, to commute from one room to the other room and maybe only be dressed from here, up and not have to do all the things we have to do to get out of the house.
Again, coming from me, but okay.
But people recognize that when they do get out, they feel better.
It's so true.
And so we have to encourage people to, okay, make a plan. What day of the week? What's the easiest day? Like you said, what's the easiest first step? Let's pick the day. And you think you can stick to it. So what do you need to do to plan the night before to make sure you get up and get out? Because now going to work, leaving the house to go to work requires more time in the morning. So we have to plan for that because that can be a barrier. So making a plan to go to an office, thinking about whether or not there are outside of work activities that are being facilitated. Can you go to that? Thinking about conferences, if you have the kind of profession that where the continuing education or conferences are a part of what you need to do, to be intentional about going to those things in person as much as possible. And then, as you noted, for us, we're able to create these consultation groups. What are other ways to connect and convene with colleagues that maybe aren't directly facilitated by the workplace, but that you can create connections and relationships you can create with other people who maybe want to get together and work alongside one another a couple times a month or a couple times a week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking about efficient isn't always what's best for you and what's best for your well-being. And sometimes the little out of the way can actually just be so nourishing. So just really quickly, I just want to, what's something that you're hopeful for or you're optimistic about related to just humans and connecting?
Yes, I'm hopeful about the fact that we're having this conversation. It makes me feel good that more discussions about mental health and well-being are just kind of floating around in popular culture. Sometimes it can be a little challenging to dispel myths and stereotypes that come up with those conversations, but it's a start. We're jumping into the conversations in a much different place now. And I find that more clients are talking to friends and family about mental health and sharing resources and supports and strategies. And so this is another conversation that when the Surgeon General's report came out, it was everywhere and everyone was talking about it. And it was on podcasts and other articles and reactions to the articles, and people were discussing it. And so again, the awareness that it could be something that's impacting physical and mental health, I think is huge. And the fact that we're able to start the conversation with people and have them think about quality of life and adjustments they can make, it really gives me hope that we can, even though it's here and there's something that's happening in our relationships, that we're better positioned to do something about it if people are aware and we can talk about it.
I am just so appreciative, and I will be hopeful with you, and thank you for that. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
You were the perfect first guest,
You're
and I
welcome.
just thank you for your friendship and your, being such a great colleague. Appreciate
I enjoyed
you.
this a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the other side of a short break, we'll wrap up this week's show episode with the closing session. Stay with us.
For more than 40 years, CAN TV has been Chicago's voice, your voice. We've shared your stories, amplified your concerns, and celebrated your triumphs. Now we want to hear from you. What programs matter most? What issues should we cover? How can we better serve your community? Visit cantv.org/feedback today. CAN TV. Experience the power of community television.
I'm so grateful to my friend and colleague, Erin, for joining us. I personally am feeling optimistic about our collective ability to combat this epidemic of loneliness. At the end of every episode, I'm going to extend an invitation to you. I'm going to invite you to reflect on your readiness for change. Maybe you're skeptical and want to learn more about what you heard today. If that sounds like you, our series page will have more information about what we discussed today. Maybe you're already ready to make a shift in your life and just need help taking that first step. If that's you, I'll share some ideas and practices to try. The first step is to face and name it. And while loneliness can feel like something that happens to us, connection is something that we can actively do. Of everything you heard today, what is something that you can implement today? Maybe this week. What is the smallest possible step? Make a list of things from easy to more involved that can help you foster connection in your life. I remember during COVID, I would take out my imaginary prescription pad and prescribe my clients walks outside. I'm no fan of meetings, but maybe that hybrid meeting, although it takes a few minutes to get to, you go in person. Finally, if you have children, how can you facilitate more interaction and less social media engagement? Talk to your kids about how important social connection is. Let's combat this do-it-on-your-own messaging that's out in society now, and we tend to lean on. We want to destigmatize talking about these feelings and create safe spaces for us and for our children to share their perspectives and needs. And finally, if you're struggling and you need someone to talk to, there are helplines and counselors who are available to you. That's our time for this week. If anything resonated with you today, if you want to find the resources we mentioned, or if you have questions, the conversation doesn't have to end here. Join me at bewell@cantv.org or Dr. Norcott on Instagram. Keep reflecting, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep the dialogue going, whether with us, your friends, or within your own community. Until we meet again, take care, stay curious, and be well together.